Hi everyone! Welcome back. If you're new, I'm Periwinkle Jellyfish and I'm a silly little person that draws silly little characters. Today I am going to be experimenting with more ways that I want to test out new aesthetics in my dreamscapes. So today's dreamscape will be focused on bubbles and crystals because I love both those things, and incorporating things you love into your art is a tip that I've heard from a lot of people, and it seems like a good idea, so I'm trying it out. In the last episode where I was experimenting with dreamscape aesthetics, I was using ribbons and bows and jellyfish, and I love all those things. And this time I'm going to be adding more things that I like to try and see if I can combine them all into one dreamscape and have absolute and utter chaos that somehow is cohesive, if that's even possible one day. I managed to convince my mother to take me to get some bubble tea. And while we were waiting for our drinks, I was doodling in my sketchbook, waiting for everything to be ready. And I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted at this point. And as soon as I got some caffeine in my system, I knew that I was ready to roll. So as soon as I got home, I opened up my iPad and Clip Studio Paint and got straight to work. While the ideas were still fresh in my mind, and I was still kind of in that rhythm of creating stuff. So, I get quickly to work on just doing everything I can, and I decided to experiment with some very, I don't know how to describe it, wavy, point-uppy hair. I thought it would be a fun thing to design on a character, and I thought it would be a fun thing to draw. So, I decided to play with that. The final touch for drawing the character herself was adding some earrings that completely defy gravity. I imagine that it's made out of wire or something. And then I just started coloring the eyes, and now we can move on to the background. So for each bubble that are close up to the character, I had some symbols in them: butterflies, hearts, stars. One of them has a cat in it. I imagine that all of these symbols represent different things to her and maybe correlate with her memories. For example, the bubble with a cat in it definitely is her cat in the real world. I thought it would be fun to add a few things in the bubbles and make you think maybe the character is more emotionally attached to them than the people viewing them. She understands what's going on with them more than we do. You can see the little kitty there. I just made a quick little doodle of it. And I was starting to finish up on the background, and I was starting to feel really, really satisfied with the line art. You can see my reaction here. So I think that displays how I was feeling about the line art pretty well. I move on to recording on my iPad the rest of this process after taking a break. I'm pretty sure I was watching Parks and Rec with my family while doing this and just kind of multitasking. I wanted to give her outfit fairly cold colors with blue and like a light yellow and green. Yellow was a warm color, but still. I wanted for her redhead hair to really stick out, so I put a little bit of thought into that and then just started to go wild with the hair streaks and adding as much detail as I possibly can and things just overlapping all at once. And then I finished with that pretty quickly. I added a few hair strands that are peeking out of the actual hair itself in the line art because I thought that would be really fun. And then I started to work on the dress. I gave her dress a warm, summery blue because it's summer now, and also I thought that color would just look really nice. I make her dress long and billowy and flowy, and I wanted to add a little bit of a pattern to the fabric, but I had to figure out what that was. So I took a quick break to color in the bracelet, and then I decided to have some green waviness on there with some white dots, yellow dots varying in size that will match with the bubbles later in the background. I color in the eyes and the eyelashes part. This was a very quick process for drawing the characters. It took me about... I actually didn't keep track of time. I'm sorry. I finish with coloring the eyes, and then I start to color in her skin. Uh, I get this done really quickly, and then I start to color in the sclera of her eyes. I try to make it look good and not wonky. And then once I've moved on from that, I move on to coloring in the background and the crystals. I wanted for the crystals to be overlapping and have somewhat transparentness to them. I colored in each section with slightly different shades of green to give it a little bit of a sense of depth. Sorry if you can hear my dogs barking in the background. They are having a meltdown because people have the audacity to live their lives outside of our house. How dare they? Anyway, I'm coloring in the blue crystal, and in the spots that are overlapping, I don't have line art because I thought that would be a cool effect. It did admittedly make things a little bit trickier, and I wouldn't be able to use the bucket tool on the overlapping areas, but oh well, I think it's worth it for the final effect. I moved on to the crystals behind her. I wanted everything to overall match with a fairly cohesive color palette. Admittedly though, my color palettes are all pretty chaotic and never really stick to just a few things. I should probably work on that, but I don't feel like doing it right now because, well, the drawing's already done. I start to work on a more dark crystal, and I start to play around with the colors a little bit and the opacity to really give the effect I want. And I start to work on this really quickly and try to not have any overlap. Then I move on to some crystals over here. If I remember correctly, they're going to be green and bright blue. I color in this crystal as quickly as I can, just trying to make this a fairly simple process. And was I correct on the color of the final crystal? Drumroll please. Yes! Ha! I knew it! Okay, I got unnecessarily excited there, maybe. I start to color in the different parts of the crystals to give them dimension, and now I can move on to coloring in the bubbles. So I start to just have fun with coloring in these bubbles, and like the crystals, I wanted them to have a lower opacity and have different colors of lighting. So a pink one might have blue lighting and a yellow one might have pink lighting. I just wanted everything to be chaos and not seem like anything is cohesive bubble-wise. I start to work on the bubble that she's interacting with, and I wanted it to have a different highlighty effect to it than the others. So I work on that for longer than I probably should have and fiddle with it way too much, and once I have finally gotten satisfied with it, then I decide that it's time to move on to some other bubbles because they deserve attention too. So I work on a green one with a star in it, and I felt like this process was getting a bit repetitive, so I took a break, and a few hours later, I came back to it and started to record from my phone again. It was at this point that I started to really lock in and get into a flow state. I honestly lost track of time drawing. I was just kind of going as fast as I could and enjoying myself, I guess. I make a dark blue bubble with some lighter blue highlights, and then I color in one that is yellow and another that is green. You'll see it there in a second. This one has a butterfly shape in it, and I decided to make a green bubble with a star shape on it. Once I'm done with all the bubbles, I will color in the other things in there, the shapes, to make everything look a little bit better. I experimented with a different way to color in the highlights of this bubble, just this one specifically, so that I could just see how the other one feels, the other process feels for later. Personally, I think I like the first option. Now I'm coloring in the different colors of the symbols of the bubbles. There we go. I finish with that after not too long and move on to coloring in the kitty. It looks a little bit wonky with the colors because it's in a blue bubble, but that's kind of how color theory works. Moving on. I wanted to make this this heart in this blue bubble pop a little bit, so I gave it a light blue color to it, and then a deep crimson red in a yellow bubble. But since it's encased in yellow, it looked a little bit bright. Not that I mind though. Now I gave her a very dark purple background and some wavy lines around the area because I thought it would look really cool. Then I decided to play around with Clip Studio Paint a little bit. Oh, forgive me. I decided to give the character a little bit of a glow to her background to kind of draw the viewer's eyes to her a little bit subtly. Then I started to add a bunch of bubbles that were just little dots in the background, so to give you the feeling that they're kind of like further out, if that makes sense. Then I started to play around with blurring the background a little bit. I think you can tell that I had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of playing around with different things until I found something that worked. Moving on into rendering, I was starting to really fall in love with how this drawing looked, and I was starting to feel really confident. I added a little bit of tiny little itty bitty sparkles in the background that you wouldn't really notice unless you were really paying attention. I just thought it made everything look a little bit sparklier, like it was coated in glitter, and I love that. I start to color in the line art and try to give her colors that kind of like stand out and are vibrant and pastel-ish. And I make all the bubbles have a very white line art to make them seem like they're glowing. I experimented with adding little clouds in the background and then lowering the opacity to give these dreams a little bit of like a haziness to them to make it seem like you're seeing it through fog. I wasn't sure how I liked the effect though, so I kind of played with it for a little bit and then left it be. I started to play around with coloring in the eyes, and I started to render with the hair a little bit by just adding some shading. I had to play around with it a little bit though before I found a result that I liked. Then I started to add a little bit of shading and darkness to her hair, just playing around with different methods of lighting just to see how I like them in little subtle ways in each of my drawings, so that slowly I'll pick up on things that I like and don't like. And so far this process has been working pretty well for me. I make a multiply layer and then set a deep dark purple on top of the entire character, and then I start to just chisel away at the effect. At first, I'm not sure what I like about it, and then I start to realize I can just have a slow fade, and then I decided to try something, and this was my reaction. So yeah, it turns out playing with the saturation layers kind of really helped this dreamscape, in my opinion. I've been trying to figure out how to make them seem very oversaturated, and I think I figured that out. I am so happy with how this drawing turned out, and I did not expect it to turn out this way, and I love it so much. I hope you like it too, and thank you so much for watching this video through to the end. If you have any ideas on something you would like to see me draw, I would love to hear it. Please don't hesitate. I would love to hear your wonderful thoughts. Again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time. Bye!